Hello, I'm Beverly O'Connor. Normally I bring you the news on Australian Network, but in the next half hour you're going to meet a man who has a devoted following across India and indeed around the world. Yogi Vasudev, known simply as Sadhguru, the founder of the Isha Foundation, a non-religious, non-profit public service organisation that is operated by 2 million volunteers across 150 cities, but headquartered at the base of the Velangiri Mountains in southern India. While yoga and meditation are at the core of his teachings to promote individual growth, the work of the foundation covers conservation, education and health. And you'll find him astonishingly pragmatic on a range of very modern-day problems. Let's meet Sadhguru.
So, as long man's belief is the fight all the time, not between good and evil. Whoever wins identifies himself as good, whoever loses is obviously
Sadhguru, welcome to Australia. Lovely to have you with us. One of the talks that you're going to give is around new generation, new leadership, and I'm interested because Asia is so absolutely poised to be the new force, particularly economically. How well positioned do you think the leadership is?
I think one reason why Asia is now poised and not before is mainly because of lack of leadership, I would say. When I say leadership, leadership has to be on many tiers of society. Generally in Asia, particularly in India, it is still a situation where if a good leader comes up, instead of reinforcing his position, people will tend to worship him as if he came from elsewhere. So, building leadership in all tiers of the society is a very important aspect if we really want to grab the economic possibility in front of us. For me, the economic possibility does not mean soaring stock markets or limousines on the street. For me, what it means is there are 400 million people who have not eaten well, yet they'll get to eat well, there'll be food on their plate. That's what it means to me.
And that's such a critical point, because you have these masses of still people living in poverty, but you've got this rising middle class that is really controlling potentially how the country evolves.
The thing is, those who are in below the poverty line are beginning to move above. That's the important thing. See, nobody can have economic prosperity, whether they're willing or not willing. Without sharing it, there cannot be economic prosperity. If it happens consciously, it would be wonderful, but whether you're conscious of it or not, invariably you will share, you cannot help it.
I'm still interested though whether you're saying the leadership is ready, but in fact it seems to be the economic drivers that are propelling the country, India and China, and that there isn't a great tradition of leadership because it hasn't evolved over many, many years.
Yes, it is very important that we evolve leadership. Right now, As opportunities come, people are filling the slot rather than preparing the people for the opportunity that is to come. So definitely there's a lot of work to be done on developing leadership. When we say leadership, always people will think Prime Minister, Chief Minister on that level. No, I mean leadership in the society at various levels.
We've seen mass anti-corruption rallies in India of late. How strong is that movement, and how effective do you think it is really going to be to make changes?
Definitely in terms of bringing focus and awareness, it's a big thing. In certain regions of the nation, it's a very powerful movement. In certain other regions, they're completely unaware of it and it doesn't matter. But at least in the urban middle class, it's a big issue. It has definitely impacted the nation in a big way. Above all, it's like generally people had kind of given up. The corruption is going to be part of our lives, kind of resignation. I think once again people are hoping, okay, there's going to be a day when there'll be no corruption. So that hope, I think, is very, very important.
It is so entrenched though, and we've often seen in life that greed gets the better of people in the end.
So I wouldn't use the word like greed, because once you have chosen market economy, there's no such thing as greed, because that's the driving force, it's no more a dirty word. So, as long as somebody is earning by legitimate means and he's paying his taxes, he drives a gold-plated Rolls Royce, it's not your business. That is the mode of economy we've chosen. Is it right or wrong? This is not the time to ask that question, because we've already made the choice.
The genie's out of the bottle.
We have already made the choice of a, market-driven economy. This is not the time to ask. Once you ask that question, you are going into a socialistic mode, which has not worked for us for some reason, for whatever reasons. It's not a time to debate, because we have chosen some system, our business is to make it a success. So, there is no room for the word greed in a market economy. As long as people are earning through legitimate means and they're paying their taxes.
I guess I come back to the point though, you're right, if you separate the word greed, the economy is driving forward without the foundations where corruption has been so endemic. So, again, something is running ahead of you, so to speak, with corruption still so much part of that society.
To activate the natural intrinsic need within a human being to share, that is where the spiritual movements and other things come in place. You can't do it through the economic system. Economic system is designed just to drive and grow. So, for a human being to decide, see, everybody wants to share. The question is only, what is his identity? If he's identified only with his family, he shares only with his family. If he's identified with his community, he shares with the community. If he identifies with a nation, he shares with the nation. If he's identified with the whole humanity, he shares with the whole humanity. So, enlarging that identity in a human being is the work of the spiritual movements. So if an individual person's identity is enlarged to the whole humanity or to all life on this planet, naturally he will share. So we have to enlarge that identity from being very narrow, we have to make it universal.
So when you look around the world at the moment with all the economic problems it's having, and then there's this emerging powerhouse in India and China, how well connected do you think we are to our spirituality?
See, the spiritual process has nothing to do with what's happening around us. It's about what's happening within us. So right now, this is a basic mistake that societies have done, that what's happening within us today is largely decided by what's happening around us. But it should be the other way. It's the human consciousness which should decide the situations, the human societies and the world. But unfortunately, outside situations are deciding human consciousness. Because we have done substantial work on the outside, we have not done any work on the inside. So we have engineered the world the way we want it, but we are yet to engineer human beings the way we want ourselves to be. So what right now I am offering is just this, it's inner engineering. To engineer yourself the way you want to be. Everything around you has happened, but nothing within you has happened.
And it's very hard to sometimes control the external, but I'm also interested in your thoughts about the cultural imperatives, because you've got this very Western entrenched system through the United States, Australia and Europe, and then you've got these rising powerhouses who are very, very different, India and China. So how do we bring together those cultural differences in a cohesive way?
So I think that it's only because people are so different the world is worth living in. If all of us were same, it wouldn't be. It would be a very drab world. I wouldn't travel to Australia if it was not different from India, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we are always looking at cultural differences with a certain apprehension because there is a history of people identifying every difference as a discriminatory process. It's the differences which makes this world exuberant. It is the differences that you and me are different, that's what makes worthwhile sitting here and talking, isn't it? If everybody was same, all the people on the planet were same, it would be a very horribly boring planet. So it's wonderful that different people operate different ways, different people think different ways. It's really nice it's that way. It is not a threatening process, it is a learning process for everybody. It is time that people are educated to trust something that doesn't look like them, doesn't feel like them, it's different. So with this apprehension, we have, obliterated many species upon this planet, thinking this insect is dangerous. That insect is actually taking care of our life, really.
Yes, the whole system. But you raise a really interesting point, because in Australia we've had first-hand experience of this, in terms of we've had numbers of students coming from India and from China, and some of the Australian population have resisted it or felt there was a danger, there was an inherent threat to their way of life, something different. And we've seen terrible scenes of violence perpetrated on Indian students.
They're even threatening me.
They're threatening you as well. Let's hope that threat passes very quickly.
So, one very important thing is, these loony fringes don't represent a nation. This must be made very clear. I've been to Australia many, many times, and I've met too many wonderful Australians to believe that this small fringe of people represent Australia. It's very important for the Australian people to make a clear statement that these fringes do not represent this nation. And I don't believe they represent this nation. So in every nation, in every society, there will be some extreme thought where they believe just about anything new is a threat. So new things are a possibility, new things are not a threat. If new things come towards us, it is a possibility. If you are open-minded, you will see it as a possibility. If you are a closed door, then you see it as a threat. It's very important that we open every nation to this possibility, that when new things come at us, it's a great possibility, it's not a threat.
But in India, it was portrayed as something that was very Australian. It was portrayed in quite a sensational way.
I feel whoever was managing the statements that came from Australia was not managed well. Somewhere people who spoke for Australia did not speak in a clear language, saying that this is a loony fringe and we'll handle it. Instead of that, they tried to defend it. The words that came out didn't come out well, and immediately media, which is looking for a certain level of sensation, naturally carried it on. And when you see pictures of somebody battered up and bleed, when blood is seen, immediately there's reaction in the people. But I don't think that is the feeling of people who have travelled and seen. It is…
So you don't feel it did lasting damage to the relationship?
No, it is not a lasting damage, but definitely people have a certain apprehension about sending their boys and girls to Australia, but still they are sending. That means it's not big enough to stop that.
In terms… let's talk about the media for a moment though, because I'm interested in your views on how the media plays out in this era of 15 minutes of fame, people wanting to be part of the media. For you as a communicator, do you view that with concern?
Definitely it's a concern, because when you have the power to shape people's opinion, I think it should be conducted in a responsible manner. When you have been given this access into every home, see, somebody said, "A knock and it shall open." You are somebody, without knocking, doors open for you. That is media, isn't it?
Yes.
Without knocking on anybody's door, you go and sit in their sitting room or wherever. These days, you're in the bedroom also.
Unfortunately.
So when you have such an excess and when you have the power to shape people's opinions and ideas, I feel it must be conducted more responsibly than the way it's conducted right now.
But it seems as if, again, it's this chicken and egg. Is it the media's responsibility, or is it what the public are demanding in this information age where everything is so accessible? People have their iPhones and in a way dictate to the media how things will play out.
See, definitely there's a commercial aspect to the media, so they will try to pander to the market. But still, media is more than a piece of the market. Media is more than a commercial establishment. Media is one of the pillars of a democratic society. So media should not forget that it is a part of a democratic process, not just a business. Yes, it is a business today. You have to take care of that end too. For that you have the commercial segment. But you are an important pillar of a democratic society, and that's a responsibility that you have to dispense with certain care.
Now, you yourself, you talked about threats against yourself, but I mean, as a communicator, as somebody spreading a message, you have opposition to what you do sometimes. How do you counter that? How do you approach that in your daily life?
I include the opposition. I don't see anybody's opposition. I only see people, some people understand what I say, some people have not understood. So if they do not understand, I put the onus on myself that I have not been able to make them understand, so I do everything to see that they understand. So I don't see any opposition in the world.
So, well, I mean, when we look at the world and we look at the various crises that are playing out, whether it's Afghanistan, whether it's the war on terror, whether it is the global economic crises, it's sometimes a world that you look at and you do find it hard to believe that there is a lot of hope.
See, once again, Afghanistan and war on terror, to mention just the two, or Iraq or whatever, I feel these situations have been terribly mishandled by people who do not understand other people. People who are living in their own fortresses and do not understand what's outside. Yes, certain bad things have been done, it need to be corrected, but it could have been done gently. It's like, instead of using a surgeon's scalpel, you're using a butcher's,
knife, yes.
Yes, I think it's been badly mishandled. Instead of handling it in a very precise way, it's like you've given an enormous publicity to terror, a tremendous publicity where terror is a relevant force today in the world, rather than being a small fringe.
But how would you have handled it differently?
It could have definitely been handled differently.
After the 9/11 attacks?
Yes.
How
Where
would you…
it could have been handled precisely. Instead of, uniformed men going as armies, they could have handled it. Right now they're learning to handle it better. But that reaction, I think, was more to please the local, voting community or whatever, I don't know what. But I think it's more happened in reaction rather than handling it in a sensible way, because you only enlarged your enemy, you did not diminish them. You made them much, much bigger than what they were.
How do you… and when you look at the political scene, so many countries, we see it in Australia, we see it in Europe, we see it in the US, where your local domestic political constituency is so important, and it can be really become in the grip of, as you say, that sort of fringe. How do politicians fight that wave?
Yes, that is a bane of democracy, that you don't always get to do the wisest thing. You you tend to do what's popular, for which we always pay a price. It's a terrible price right now. What was a small enemy has become a worldwide enemy.
I'm hearing a lot from you about personal responsibility though, individual responsibility. How critical is that in terms of making those changes?
See, ultimately as human actions or human thought or human emotions come, it is only individual responsibility which can permeate into social action or into international action. The more important your position becomes in the world. Right now you sit here as a news anchor, and now when you have the power, to impact millions of people. Now every thought that you generate, every emotion that you generate, every word that you utter, every action that you perform becomes of profound importance. So what I'm saying is, if you were an ant, you could walk upon everybody. If you become an elephant, then you have to walk carefully. So, as you get into positions of power and responsibility, your individual responsibility becomes of paramount importance.
A yogi, spiritual master, and humanitarian, Sadhguru works tirelessly towards the physical, mental, and spiritual well-being of all.
I'm interested too that you don't come from any religious discipline. There is no religion that you've attached your beliefs to. What do you think the role of religion is in modern life?
You're getting me on a sticky wicket.
That's good.
Because I still want to live. Now, let me first of all explain the essential difference. The essential difference between spiritual process, as we recognize, because the word spirit is usually connected with religion, so let me create the necessary distinction. When you say a spiritual process, you refer to yourself as a seeker. You become a seeker because you realize you do not know. When you identify yourself with a religious process, you refer to yourself as a believer. That means what you do not know or whatever you do not know, you believe. The struggle on the planet is essentially not between good and evil. The struggle on the planet is essentially between your belief versus my belief. One man's belief versus another man's belief is the fight all the time, not between good and evil. Whoever wins identifies himself as good. Whoever loses is obviously bad because he doesn't live to speak. So, religions have happened over a period of time. As spiritual process got overly organized, they became religions. Essentially, when all of them started, they started as spiritual processes. Over a period of time, people who are not in that dimension of experience, but who identify with some group, they organize it to a point where it becomes a concretized religion. I don't think we need any concrete blocks on the planet. But you cannot dissolve the concrete block because it's there. So it is better make it more porous so that people can come in and go out, and people need not… See, one important thing we need to do is, as part of our school education, every nation has to do this, that whatever the 5, 10 major religions, children should expose themselves to it. Not that they have to change their religion or whatever, but they should read about other people and take away the misconceptions that they have, so that they're little more porous and open. Right now, it's like a barrier that they cannot cross. I think it's time we loosen those barriers. Our world has come to a place… There was a time you belonged to a certain nation and all of them belonged to one religion, you never traveled outside, you never met anybody, you never had to deal with anybody, it was different. Today, the global… it's not a world, it's a village where everybody is communicating with everybody, so it's time that we loosen this, religious barriers that we have. We need to understand we believe something only because we do not know.
How confident are you that that might happen, where we still see religion, as you say, in the sort of fight for good and evil, still gripping so many parts of our world?
It is, but also the loosening is also happening, not necessarily because of a conscious effort. I think it's happening more because of technology. People are getting to communicate with somebody with a safe distance, on the internet. Now you can communicate with somebody from a distance where you don't have to fear him. And this communication, I think, ultimately will lead to a place where religious process or the religious concrete blocks will become more porous and people will mingle with each other much better because there is a safe distance and afterwards they can come together.
Let's hope you're right. Sadhguru, it's been delightful talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.